The tale unfolds in Los Angeles in 1992. At some point of a time of social and racial anxiety, Mercer, a person navigating complex instances, gets a name from Child Protection Services. He has these days been granted conditional custody of his son Antoine. Notwithstanding the strained dating among them, Mercer is decided to tackle this duty. After the decision, he heads to Antoine's room to wake him up for college. Awaken Guy, it is time for college. In the meantime, in some other part of the town, a guy named Dragon meets his pal Cop. Dragon proposes one very last heist. He believes this may be their threat to go away in the back of a lifestyles of crime. Lower back at residence, Mercer prepares breakfast for Antone, but Antone refuses to devour and stays remote. Anxiety fills the air among father and son. The radio in the historical past reviews troubling information. A trial regarding Rodney King is all over the headlines. King, a black guy, was overwhelmed through a white police officer and numerous colleagues. The 4 police officials who have been videotaped repeatedly beating an unarmed guy. The case sparks outrage and grabs the eye of the black network. Mercer attempts to connect with Antoine. He hopes to shut the emotional distance among them. However, Antoine, regardless of the reality that irritated, desires solutions. He accuses Mercer of living in the back of him during his early life. He furthermore says Mercer was absent at the same time as his mom had the accident. Mercer lessens in advance than the entirety he's taking in. Anand's anger, however, topics worsen at the same time as Antoine mutters an insult beneath his breath. Mercer, indignant to the disrespectful growth his voice, "You going to apprehend me?" He gadgets a strict curfew for Anine. He tells him the unrest surrounding the Rodney King case is why it's far vital with inside the intervening time. Reagan alternatives up his brother Dennis. They had to see their father. La person said for his harsh processes this Friday night time of pops. Is he prepared? Yep. Reagan uses the visit to provide and reason for their planned heist. He goals to show Dennis that the plan can work in a few different part of town. Mercer visits a grocery keep at the same time as shopping, for he notices a fixed of more youthful thugs harassing the Asian cashier. Their behavior unsettles him. He steps in advance and speaks calmly, asking them to prevent bothering the woman. Watch your mouth, watch your mouth. However, as opposed to backing down, the thugs come to be competitive. One and all them pulls out a gun and presses it against Mercer's head. Earlier than the scenario gets worse, an older guy named DeVille intervenes. He pulls the thugs returned and scolds them harshly for his or her moves. He reminds them of Mercer's significance to the network. With inside the beyond realizing their mistake, Satan apologizes to Mercer immediately. All through the verbal exchange, Satan asks Mercer while he became launched from jail. Mercer replies lightly, approximately 6 months in the past. 6 months. He says he became launched 6 months in the past and is now living a quiet existence, seeking to begin over on the identical time. Reagan takes his father to a manufacturing unit. He lays out the information of a excessive stakes heist focused on a secure crammed with $10 million really well worth of platinum. Reagan expectantly explains the plan. He stalks layouts and insider tips furnished through a supply on the manufacturing unit. He describes the secure as strong and covered through a complicated alarm machine. If the alarm is going off, a metallic cage locks the secure. Absolutely, this makes having access to it nearly not possible. Reagan offers his plan with self-belief. However, his father nonetheless has doubts. That is simply out of our league. It is simply over our heads. He thinks the plan is too formidable. He questions how they could get beyond the factory's tight protection and more than one surveillance camera. The dismissive comments from his father deepen his frustration, but Reagan remains silent. Without beginning an argument, he drives the returned home. In the meantime, Mercer is likewise on the factory. He works there and is visible collecting his get admission to card and keys on the protection checkpoint. He talks in brief with Joseph, the pinnacle of protection. Their conversation touches at the Rodney King trial. Joseph stalks his worries, approximately rising tensions with inside the network. He predicts chaos if the jury policies towards the black sufferer. Mercer starts his shift and the tale shifts return to Reagan and Dennis. Reagan remains disenchanted through their father's rejection of the plan. In spite of this, Dennis remains through his brother's facet. He gives aid and facilitates. Reagan lives centered. Later that day, breaking information reviews the jury's selection. The officials concerned with inside the Rodney King case are declared now no longer guilty. The decision shocks the black network and sparks outraged protests. Damage out throughout laws. Angeles. The scenario escalates rapidly, main to considerable violence and chaos. Antoine comes directly domestic from school. He's bowled over whilst he sees the riots spreading close to their community. A liquor shop is being looted nearby within the residence. The TV shows scenes of the unrest. The footage highlights the big scale of the protests. On the identical time Reagan watches the information, he notices the police suffering to deal with the riots. It moves him as the ideal second to perform the heist, even as law enforcement is distracted. Seizing the possibility, Reagan calls his father. To his marvel, his father has the same opinion to continue with the plan. No person minding the shop. In the meantime, Mercer and the alternative factory employees are dispatched domestic early for their protection. The control advises them to keep away from the unrest and live secure. Reagan quickly hears from his source on the factory. The source tells him that staff is decreased and safety is lighter than standard. Seeing this because the ideal possibility, Reagan gathers Dennis and fast movements to execute their plan. Each one of these officials from the down the most modern look on their manner. They forestall at Copeland's residence to select out him up. Copeland's spouse, who's closely pregnant, concerns approximately his involvement. He tries to reassure her and urges her to live secure within the residence earlier than living with the group. Lower back on the manufacturing facility, Mercer grows more and more concerned. Approximately in Antoine's protection, he explains to Joseph, the pinnacle of safety, that his domestic is an ordinarily black community, and with the riots occurring, the place has turned out to be very risky. Joseph is aware of Mercer's situation. He consents to allow Mercer and Antoine live within the manufacturing unit for protection. In case you and your son need to join me, I'll be all proper with Cy. Meanwhile, Reagan is going to choose up his father. He notices that his father has delivered two employed thugs for safety. Reagan, already careworn, turns into pissed off. Together along with his father's alternatives on the equal time, Mercer navigates the chaotic streets. Furious are anywhere. He's seeking out Antoine while he receives domestic. He unearths the house empty. He right away begins involved searching for his son. Reagan's group movements ahead with the plan. Dennis drives the van to the manufacturing unit. Internal, Joseph feels bored while looking the surveillance cameras. He makes a decision to take a stroll and patrol the constructing outdoor. Reagan tases and restrains the simplest safety defend on the front. The team drives their vans immediately through the factory's main front. Believing the constructing is empty, they expectantly head through the loading docks. Their assumption proves incorrect. They encounter Joseph standing close to a merchandising device. Reagan attempts to preserve the state of affairs calm. He asks Joseph to transport apart and keep away from problem. You fellas picked the incorrect area to rob. But earlier than Reagan can escalate, one and all his father's employed thugs acts impulsively and shoots Joseph. Reagan threatens the thug in retaliation. The thug, unshaken, counters. Together along with his personal danger, the war of words almost spirals out of managed. Dill intervenes. He reminds all of them in their shared intention. The platinum they got here to thieve with tempers extremely cooled. The thugs disable the factory's telecell, smartphone strains and surveillance structures. They then use a forklift to attain the secure room and start placing up their gadget to crack the secure with. Inside the midst of all this, Mercer ultimately finds Antoine. He spots him status still out of doors. A grocery shop being looted via way of means of neighborhood rears. Furious and relieved on the identical time, Mercer grabs Antoine via way of means of the collar and pulls him far from the chaos. Without announcing tons, he leads him to the automobile on the manufacturing unit. The thugs begin drilling into the secure with willpower. Unbeknownst to them, Joseph regains consciousness in spite of his accident. Summoning his last electricity, he drags himself to the protection panel and presses the emergency button. This triggers the mechanism that begins evolved reducing the steel cage around the secure. Reagan reacts speedy and drives the forklift ahead to dam the cage from sealing absolutely with. Inside the chaos, Copeland by accident receives his leg stuck beneath the forklift's the front tire. The load crushes his leg, inflicting him large ache. Reagan panics and attempts to opposite the forklift to unfasten his friend, but his father coldly refuses. He insists that reversing the forklift could reason the cage to drop and ruin their complete heist. You ain't getting him out from beneath the fork. Annoyed and indignant, Reagan lashes out at his father. He shouts curses at him, blaming him for constantly being egocentric and unhelpful. In reaction, orders the thugs to thieve the forklift's keys. This makes certain Reagan cannot opposite it. In the meantime, the alarm brought on via way of means of Joseph reaches the government and air patrol helicopter is dispatched to analyze the scenario on the manufacturing unit. Then again Antoine attempts to get away from automobile. He runs closer to the ongoing protests. He feels the urge to be part of the chaos. Mercer speedy pulls him returned into the auto. He stops him firmly. Mercer explains that violence isn't always the solution to issues which have lasted for see you later. He attempts to make Antoine see that the protests are simplest harming their personal community. The protests are playing into what the government count on. Return at the manufacturing unit. The thugs disabled the alarm via way of means of slicing the last system connections to make certain Joseph won't intrude once more. They shoot him as soon as more, this time fatally. With Joseph out of the manor, they hold their efforts to crack the secure. Mercer and Antoine come across a demanding scene. A set of black men is terrorizing an harmless white couple out of right here. Mercer pulls over, receives out of the auto and steps in. He makes use of force to subdue the institution and helps the couple escape. He urges them to leave speedy and guarantees their protection before returning to his automobile. Returned on the manufacturing unit, determined to fly away. In the meantime, Mercer and Antoine are stopped via way of means of police officials imposing the curfew. The officials behave with prejudice. They pull Mercer and Antoine out of the auto and seek them without motive. Close up. Even though they locate not anything incriminating, the officials launch them without apologizing. The experience shakes Antoine. He witnesses the BL indifference and mistreatment firsthand. Lower back on the manufacturing unit, the robbers open the secure with explosives. Interior, they locate the platinum. It makes the millionaires immediately. Reagan steps away to put together the van for his order escape. Dennis is going to the restroom to ease the blood off his arms after the incident with Copeland. Across the identical time, Mercer arrives on the manufacturing unit with Antoine as they method. Mercer notices the primary safety the fan is lacking. This feels uncommon to him. In spite of his suspicions, he enters the constructing and tells Antoine to visit the restroom for the reason that boy mentions he desires to use it. Interior, Antoine's unexpected appearance startles Dennis. He instinctively points a gun at him. In the meantime, Mercer reveals Joseph's useless frame. Greatly surprised and indignant, Mercer grabs Joseph's gun and actions cautiously through the manufacturing unit. Quickly the thugs spot Mercer and open Hearth Place. He narrowly escapes and begins looking for Antoine, but he realizes his son is now lacking. Determined, Mercer rushes of the loading dock and shuts off the strength to benefit the bonus over the thugs. Using the chaos, Mercer engages one of the thugs. He overpowers him and knocks him out. Then Mercer runs lower back to the loading dock. There he sees Reagan seeking to park the van for the getaway. Mercer ambushes Reagan and knocks him subconscious with one punch. He drags Reagan away to interrogate him. In the meantime, Dennis takes Antoine to his father. Little questions Antoine in the front of Copeland. Copeland is an extraordinary ache after dropping his leg, which needed to be amputated. His cries grow louder with each passing 2D. Mercer desires to recognize the robber's plans. He questions Reagan, however receives no useful facts. Mercer begins evolve to piece matters collectively. He realizes they want the platinum. He sneaks into the secure room and sees the threatening his son. Copeland's screams end up an excessive amount of fuel to endure. In a merciless act, he shoots Copeland numerous instances, killing him. This brutal act leaves Dennis and Antoine in surprise. Antoine convinces LOL that he only got here to the manufacturing facility to locate his lacking father who works there. His explanation alongside together along with his sincerity movements well enough to permit him move unhurt. Lamentably, the thugs go back on the worst possible time. They file to LOL that a person has taken Reagan. Angered with the aid of using the information, LOL will become suspicious of Antoine. How'd he stop? He calls the boy lower back and accuses him of mendacity. Approximately his father. His anger rises. Speedy, he makes a decision to apply Antoine as bait to get Reagan to maintain the boy from escaping. He maintains Antoine near and sends the thugs to test at the van. The thugs look at the car and discover that the van's rotor is lacking, making it motionless. In the meantime, Mercer escapes from the secure room. He attempts to signal a patrolling helicopter for assist. Despite his determined tries to wave it down, the helicopter flies away without noticing him. Mercer gathers himself. All of a sudden, one of the thugs ambushes him from at the back. Of a fierce combat breaks out. The thug needs the stolen rotor. Understanding it, smiles had to get the van going for walks. Once more Mercer refuses. He retaliates and the combat escalates. Mercer manages to seize his weapon and shoots the thug. The effect sends the thug crashing through the secure room's glass roof. He lands lifelessly in the front of Anton Mercer. Speedy returns to Reagan and ties him. He sees the beaten and limited guy and feels some sympathy. Mercer is familiar with the ache of having a father so heartless, he reveals. A stunning fact: will simply killed a black member of his group in the front of his son. Reagan realizes it have to have been Copeland, his near buddy. The revelation turns him towards his father. In the meantime, Will and some other thug pour acid over the vault and numerous objects inside the room. The chemical substances break any proof. They pack the platinum bars into luggage and prepare for his or her breakout. They finalize their plans and start shifting out someplace else. Dan sits down with Antoine. He attempts to collect statistics, asking Antoine if he is aware of in which Reagan is probably. Antoine swears he doesn't realize something. Will realizes time is jogging out. He communicates with Mercer over the radio and proposes a deal. Mercer have to come to the loading dock for an alternate. Unarmed Reagan. Speedy warns Mercer that is a entice. He explains that his father never leaves witnesses alive. Antoine's presence makes him a target. Information the stakes. Mercer creates a counter plan. He convinces Reagan to cooperate on the loading docks. Dennis hundreds feet into the van. Will retrieves the van's rotor and Speedy fixes it. The van can now begin, but tells intentions flip darker. He makes a decision to shoot Antoine for revenge that is due to the fact Mercer killed certainly considered one among his thugs. In advance, the state of affairs escalates rapid, but Mercer acts hastily. He pushes Reagan closer to the van for canopy and opens her place. A chaotic shootout follows. At some point of this chaos, Dennis is hit with the aid of using a stray bullet. No matter being shot, Dennis allows load the last platinum into the van. Reagan steps in to help him. In the meantime, Mercer and Dan control to get into the driver's seat. They power off with the van and the platinum, leaving chaos at the back of Will. Complete of greed and anger, steals Mercer's automobile close to the factory gate. He's joined with the aid of using his last thug and that they begin chasing the van relentlessly. The chase maintains. Dennis succumbs to his accidents in Reagan's arms. The loss devastates Reagan. He's filled with rage and sorrow in his heartbreak. Reagan opens the van door. He begins taking pictures at his father. Will's thug retaliates and shoots Reagan with inside the chest. No matter the ache Reagan fights on, he uses his ultimate electricity to shoot and kill the thug. Reagan then collapses from his wound. The gunshots distract Mercer and Antoine. They lose manipulate of the van. It crashes violently, leaving the automobile destroyed. The platinum spills onto the ground. Scattered. Will arrives on the scene. He surveys the aftermath. His eyes fall on the platinum now misplaced to him. He sees Reagan slightly clinging to existence. In a rare second of remorse, Cell methods his son. He apologizes for failing as a father, but the apology turns merciless. He shoots Reagan with inside the head, finishing his existence. Listening to the commotion, Mercer begins dragging himself out of the wreck at the back of. Afterwards, Mercer hugs Antoine tightly. They may be beaten. With the aid of using relief, they simply survived horrors. Collectively, they climb right into a last automobile and power away.